Alright, hey everyone, Carol from Segovia Quilts here. In today's video, we're going to be doing a Halloween project. And I know you're probably thinking, it's April, why would we be doing a Halloween project? The reason is because I tend to procrastinate and I've been wanting to make a table runner, but I figured I would do it for like a holiday, not just like a generic table runner for like whenever. So the holiday that I feel like is kind of not represented as much as far as like quilting projects go is Halloween. I feel like Thanksgiving gets heavy projects, Christmas for sure gets heavy projects, but I felt like Halloween kind of wasn't really a big project fabric wise. So I decided to do a Halloween table runner. And I picked the perfect fabric collection for it, and it's called Sophisticated Halloween, and it's by My Mind's Eye for Riley Blake Designs. So let me show you the prints that I picked out for this table runner. Alright, so for today's table runner, I'm going to be making it out of triangles, and there are several different templates and rulers that you can get for triangles. There are equilateral triangles, which essentially means that the triangle is the same size, all three edges are the same size. So this ruler here is not an equilateral triangle ruler, and this bottom edge here, if you're not taking into consideration the seam allowance, this bottom edge measures 6 inches, and then this side edge, not taking into consideration the seam allowance, measures 6 3/4 inches. So this is not an equilateral triangle ruler, but it is a triangle ruler. This is a ruler that I have from the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and you can use this one to get your triangles, and it has the information. It says line up edge of fabric strip here to cut your triangles, so you have this version that you can use. And then most regular straight rulers have the lines here where you can do 60, 45, or 30 degrees, and this can give you triangles as well. And then this is just another ruler. This is a 6 by 24 inch. This one also has the 60, 30, and 45 degree angles here going this way and going this way. So there are many rulers out there that you can use to get triangles. I am not going to be doing equilateral triangles for today's project, but I will be using the Tri Tool by Darling Zimmerman and Joy Hoffman. This is a 6.5 inch ruler, and I think this will give us a nice size table runner. I'm looking for it to be about 40 inches by 12 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and go with this ruler today. Alright, so I have 5 fabrics that I'm going to be cutting my triangles out of, and then I have 2 fabrics additional that's going to be one for the binding and one for the backing of my table runner. So I'm going to start with one of my fabrics. Now, of the 5 fabrics that I am making this table runner out of, 3 of them are directional. So this one with the crows, all of the crows are essentially, this is the bottom and this is the top. Now, there are some fabrics out there where like this crow might be upside down, so then that would make the fabric not directional. But all of my crows are facing with their feet down here and their heads up here, so this is a directional fabric. My second directional fabric is going to be this orange one with the bats. All of the bats, their head is up here, their feet are down here. And then the third fabric is this one here, which also has the crows. Again, head is up here, feet are down here. So I need to keep that in mind when I am cutting out my triangles, because I want all of my directional prints, I want the feet essentially to be on the outsides of the table runner and the heads to be on the insides of the table runner. So I'm going to start with this fabric first, and I'm going to go ahead and do my triangles at the full 6.5 inches, and then they will finish at 6 inches once everything is sewn together. So I'm just going to start by lining my ruler up. Actually, I'm going to save my selvage because let me show you all this super cute selvage print here. So this selvage here has these tiny little crows in the colors that is in the print itself. So I really like that Riley Blake does that, especially if you keep your selvages to do like a string quilt or to do specifically a selvage project. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off my selvage because I want to keep that. All right, so now I have a fresh cut to start from. I'm just going to line it up somewhere that looks good. I've got a crow right here pretty much in the center, and then I have a couple of other crows that I'll be able to get in my cut. So now I'm just going to go ahead and give it a cut. Now this ruler does have the tip nicked out. You want to make sure you get that tip. This helps when it comes to lining up your ruler or your fabric cuts later on in the project. Okay, so now I'm just going to cut this bottom edge here, and we should be good to go. All right, so this is my little bit of trash. So now we have our first little triangle here. So we'll go ahead and set that aside. So now I have 5 fabrics, but I need 14 triangles. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut 3 from all of our fabrics, and then all right, so I have all 3 of this print cut out. So as I was cutting out my triangles, I was looking at these 2 pieces here, and I was like, this would make a super cute Halloween like banner that I could put on the wall, and that would allow me to do something with this extra fabric that's left over, and the crows would be facing the right direction. So I might do that. I might hang on to the extra fabric here and make like a Halloween banner. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut out the rest of my prints, paying special attention to my other 2 prints that are directional. Alright, so I have all of my triangles cut out. I went ahead and cut a few extra of my purple and my black fabric here, just so that I can use them to fill in between my crows and my bats if I needed to. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing my layout now, and I think I'll start with my spiderweb fabric here. So I know I'm going to end my 2 edges with my fabric essentially like this. So it's not going to be a straight edge, so I am going to be binding on a curve, well, not a curve. I am going to be binding on an angle, which is fine. So I want to keep that in mind, that I want it to end like this. Let me make sure you can see that. So I want my 2 ends to be like this instead of like this. Now I could do either way would look fine, but I want mine to end with an outside angle here instead of an inside angle. So I'm just going to start, I think, with my spiderweb fabric right here, and I'll do my purple fabric there. So we'll go ahead and lay out, I think, my spiderweb fabric, because I know I don't want like my crows to be right next to each other. So we'll just lay out a couple of these and see how that looks, I think. Like I said, 40 inches by 12 inches. I think 40 might be a bit much, so I might go a little bit smaller. So as of right now, we would have about 2.5 feet. So that would be about 30 inches, which is not terribly far off. I think if I were to add in another, I don't know, I feel like I like this size. I don't want it to get too big. So I think I'll go ahead and keep this layout here. So now what we need to do is we need to start sewing our triangles together. And to do that, this is where the little tip off of your triangles is going to come in handy. So what you want to do, let me scooch this over a little bit. Hopefully you can see that. So now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to line your edges up, and you essentially want to take this tip of the fabric here, hopefully you can see that, and you want both of the edges to line up on either side of your triangle. Let's see, hopefully you can see that. There we go, okay. So you want to put it so that the tip of this triangle is touching the tip of the orange, and then the tip over here is touching this edge of the orange also. And then obviously you want this edge to be lined up here. So now if you get it lined up properly, both nicked off edges should be lined up on both sides. So over here should be lined up, and then over here should be lined up. So once you get that, then you can go ahead and sew 1/4 inch down, and then you're going to do that for the rest of, oops, there you go. So you're going to do that for all of your triangles on this row, and then all of your triangles on this row. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I have all of my triangles sewn together in both of my rows. So I do still need to press my seams, but so far I think it looks really cute. And I think I have an idea on the quilting I'm going to do for this little table runner. But first I need to go and press all of my seams, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Alright, so I have all of my seams pressed. I tried to press them in a way that my white fabric, the seams were going out, and that was really my only concern when I was pressing, just because I didn't want to see the fabric showing through on the front. So that was pretty much all that I did, but I have all of my seams pressed. So now I can go ahead and sew this one seam here in the middle, and it's just pretty sides touching, and then sew 1/4 inch down. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. All right, so I have my 2 rows sewn together, and as of right now, my table runner measures 30 inches exactly. So this I think is going to be a good size. And so now the next step is to actually make our quilt sandwich. And for the backing, I'm going to go ahead and use this white spider web fabric here. So this is going to be my backing fabric. And you can see that based on the size, I have plenty of that. So this is going to be my backing fabric, and then I'm going to use this orange and white stripe to do my binding. So I think this will look really nice as a binding. So now I need to go ahead and make my quilt sandwich. And I have decided, I think for the first time, I'm going to try my hand at hand quilting a project. So I have this number 8 pearl cotton here, and this is kind of like, I would say, a fall color. It's looks like a variegated, as in it changes colors throughout. So I'm going to use this number 8 pearl cotton to do a little bit of hand stitching on my table runner here. So I think what I will do is, before I do my quilt sandwich, I'm going to mark a couple of lines. So I think I'm going to essentially follow my seam lines. I'm undecided if I'm going to come up 1/4 inch away and then come back down, or if I'm just going to do 1/4 inch straight across. I'm not sure yet, but I have time to figure it out. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and make my quilt sandwich, and then we will try our hand at some hand quilting. All right, everyone, so I have finished hand quilting my Halloween table runner. So this was the first time I've ever tried hand quilting, and it's definitely a learning curve. So let me zoom in and show you some of my stitches. So let's start looking at this black triangle first. So this was the first one that I did, and I counted my stitches, and then I counted the stitches of the next triangle that I did, which was this orange one right here. So now my stitches on the orange one got smaller than they were on the black one, and I only know that because I had more stitches in the orange one than I did in the black one, which I didn't necessarily have an issue with or anything like that, but it was just something that I noticed. But overall, I feel like my stitches look pretty decent here on the front. So let me just show you a couple more blocks here. So I did not do the edges yet, so my plan is to sew the binding on first. I think I'll do the initial sewing on of the binding, which I normally sew my binding onto the back first and then flip it around to the front. So I think I'll sew my binding onto the back, and then I think I will fold my binding over. I don't know if I'll go ahead and sew it on or not, but I do still want to do another row of the hand stitching along the edge by the binding. That's my initial thought right now. That could change once I get the binding sewn on, but as of right now, I do feel like I want to sew an outside row of hand stitching on to my little table runner here. So, all right, so the front, I feel like looks pretty good. I drew my lines on the fabric, so I had, you know, straight lines. I wasn't gonna have wonky, wavy stitches. So I think the front looks good. Now let's have a look at the back. So let me zoom out and show you the all over back. So now it is harder to see on the back because it is a relatively busy print in regards to like the spider webs, and then the thread that I used is orange, which yes, you can see it on the fabric, but because it's so busy, I think it's harder to find on the fabric. But let me zoom in and show you my stitches here on the back. So this is where I know, okay, obviously I still have a lot of work to do to get my hand stitching to look nice and consistent. So we'll start, let's see, I don't know, I'll just pick a triangle, but okay, we'll start here. So like, you can see these stitches here. So like you can noticeably see the stitches. Let me bring it closer actually for you. There you go. All right, so you can see my stitches here. Decent size. If I had to take a guess, I'd say this is probably about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch. It's a little bit on the bigger side. So like there's these stitches which look good, but then like right over here, I've got these little guys. So I was trying to take bigger stitches on the front so that you could see the thread, and I guess because of that, my stitches on the back, let's see where to go, there he is. My stitches on the back ended up being really super teeny tiny. I know it's hard to see because it's a darker part of the thread on black fabric, but they ended up being super teeny tiny on the back. And you know, I mean, even just right here, looking at this stitch compared to that stitch right there, noticeable difference. So obviously I do have some work to do, and we see that pretty much throughout the entire back side of the quilt. Like look at these little itty bitty teeny tiny stitches. So yeah, I do have some work to do to try and get better with my hand sewing, but I feel like overall, not a bad first attempt, I don't think. And you can see, so looking at it through the camera, let me see, you can see, oh there we go, yeah. You can see the shadowing of the stitching. So I do like how that looks. Again, you can't really see the actual stitches, but you see the shadows of the overall stitch design. So yeah, overall, I think not bad for a first attempt. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and trim the edges. Well, I'll go ahead and take out my safety pins, but I'm going to trim the edges of the quilt, if I can get them out. I'm going to trim the edges, and then I'm going to do my binding. So I do still have to cut my binding strips and then sew them together. And then I need to measure to see how much binding I actually need. But then once I get that figured out, I'm gonna go ahead and do my first attaching of the binding, and then I'll see how it looks to see if I want to do another row of hand stitching. Because if I do, I feel like I will do the hand stitching row before completing my binding. This way I can hide my knots in the binding before it's fully attached. And I only say that because this is, you know, again, my first time hand quilting, and I am using a number 8 pearl cotton, and I don't necessarily know that I'm quite good enough to be able to bury a stitch through the fabric with as thick as the pearl cotton is. So I feel like I'll just make it easier on myself and have the binding still open where I can hide the knot in the binding. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and trim the edges here, and then I'll start working on the binding. I did want to also show you all, so I picked up this little hand sewing kit off of Amazon. So I did start my hand sewing without a thimble. I have tried to use thimbles before, and I just never really was a fan of them, but after a while, this part of my finger right here started to hurt. So I pulled out this little leather finger cover here, and I was trying to use this. It's still very new and awkward to me to use any kind of thimble, but it did help a little bit towards the end. I feel like I started getting the hang of it a little bit more, but this is definitely a nice little kit that I saw. It comes with all the needles, several different thimbles, including like the more traditional one that you just put completely on top of your finger, and then it also has like these ring versions where you can wear it somewhere else on your finger, and then it has these little guys where it's open, and then the one side is the thimble part, and then it's adjustable so you can cinch it down to be tighter, and then obviously the leather one. So I picked this one up. I think it was less than 10 bucks on Amazon, but I did find it helpful once I kind of started getting over that learning curve, and it does come with this nice little kit here. So if you're interested in this hand sewing kit, I'll have it linked in the description down below for you. Alright, so I cut my binding, sewed my binding, ironed my binding, and I did my first round of sewing on to my table runners. So the binding has been attached, but it's still open on the top. So I put all of the clips around here. This way I could get a line for where my binding's going to stop. This way I could go ahead and do one more round of hand stitching along the edges of the table runner. So now that I have all of that done, I can go ahead and get out my supplies to do the last round of stitching, and yeah, I can go ahead and knock that last round of stitching out. So let's go ahead and do that. So I just finished my lap around with my hand stitching, and I think it looks okay. I feel like I was able to get my stitches to be a little bit more consistent on the front and the back. So all that's left now is to just sew down this top side of the binding. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. All right, so I just finished sewing on the binding, and here is my completed table runner. How stinking cute is that? So I am super proud of the way it came out. First, because this is my first table runner that I've ever done, and second, because this is the first time that I've done hand stitching. I've never done hand quilting, and I do still have a lot to learn, but I think it came out super cute for my first time. So let me zoom in and show you all some of the details. One, of the fabric, and two, of my still needs to work on hand quilting. All right, so here you can really see the hand stitching. So I feel like it looks really nice on the front of this table runner. and I'll just show you guys a couple of the different blocks here so you can see. I feel like as far as consistency goes, I think I did a pretty good job on the front anyways. So yeah, not too terrible for my first time. But also, look at the details in this fabric. So I know it's upside down, but look at the details in the flower and the foliage and the crow. Like the amount of details that went into this print, it just blows me away, honestly. All right, so let's keep scrolling through. So there's my bats, my spider webs. Let me show you this print here too. So again, I know it's upside down, but I think you can still appreciate the details. Like, look at the sprigs of foliage. Look at how small that is compared to my fingernail. All right, and then I feel like the binding, the stripe orange and white binding, I thought would be super cute. Obviously, it's part of the collection, so it's going to match, but I just really think stripes like scream Halloween, especially when it's in an orange, or like had it been even in the purple or the gray. Yeah, I think it's like the perfect touch. My thought is I'm just not going to show people the back of my table runner. I mean, the nice part is the front anyways. So, oh, and I wanted to show you my labels. So I bought these satin labels from Ever Emblem, and I've been adding them to all of my little projects here, so I thought it was perfect. And for this one, I made sure to pick it up when I stitched my last little lap around here, and also when I stitch on my binding. So let me show you here up close. So you can see my binding stitch right there where I sewed down the front. I didn't want to catch my label in it. So yeah, I think it looks super cute. So that is it for today's video on making this Halloween table runner. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. If you like the sophisticated Halloween fabric collection, I do have a link where you can get yourself either a fat quarter bundle, or you could do this project even with 10-inch squares. You can pick or choose if you want to do yardage or fat quarter bundle or 10-inch squares. Either way, I have a link where you can pick up all of those in the description down below, so make sure to check that out. To cut out the triangles that I used to make the table runner, I did use a tri-tool triangle ruler. I found it easier to use the ruler than having to use like my long 6 by 24 inch ruler. I could have used that ruler, but I had the tri-tool, so I figured I would go ahead and use it. If you want to pick up the tri-tool as well, I have a link for that in the description down below also. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, I also have a link where you can pick up that hand sewing kit from Amazon down below as well. This table runner came together super quickly, and honestly the hand sewing didn't take me as long to do as I thought it would. I want to say total it took me maybe about 4 or 5 hours, and I did that over like 2 days. So it went pretty quickly. And you saw, as I mentioned in the video, to do my last little outside lap took me 23 minutes or so. Obviously I sped it up for y'all, but it took me a little bit of time to get all the way around it. If you liked today's video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber to my YouTube channel yet, please make sure you do so by hitting the subscribe button. Also, make sure to check me out on Instagram and Facebook. I have the links for both of those down below in the description. Thanks for watching today's video, and until next time, I will see you all later.